宇宙が汚され続けていくなら、いつ第二のスペースゴジラが現れるかもわからない。私たち人類への警告だわ。
Spearheading my list of worst monster designs in the Godzilla franchise is SpaceGodzilla. Besides the very gnarly name, this dude is literally a Nagila looking Super Godzilla from the game Super Godzilla, with huge ass crystals coming out of his back. It just isn't sillier than his flying mode that is a giant space rock with the monster popping out of the bottom, perpetually looking down. It gets sadder when you look at the conceptual art for the character and find out that he could have been either more rock monster than Bizarro Godzilla or just plain different enough of the other creature. If after all this very tech rant you are still wondering who the hell is SpaceGodzilla, I will be answered in the next minute while we talk about his debut film. At the G-Force, an ambitious project is being conceived to attempt controlling Godzilla via telepathy. Essential to this plan to work is, of course, the now director of the Psychic Division at the department and most gifted paranormal in all of Japan, Miki Segusa. Problem is, between the events of the last movie and the present time, she developed a soft spot for the big guy and is very vocal about not wanting to see him destroyed. Of course, that she refusing to cooperate would mean a less experienced individual would have to participate of the operation in her place, which could prove dangerous for him, so she has no choice but to accept being part of the whole thing. The G-Force then leaves to an isolated island that is currently being surveyed by one of their agents, Major Yuki, due to frequent appearances by the king of the monsters himself on the place. Arriving there, however, they find out that Yuki has other plans for Godzilla. By planting landmines full of tear gas in the beach the creature usually lands, he intends to leave Goji confused for just long enough to shoot an anticoagulant at him, killing the monster for good. Turns out Yuki has a very old grudge against Godzilla that goes back to when he killed his best friend, Colonel Gondo. Yes, that Colonel Gondo.
薬は注射より飲むのに限るぜ。ゴジラさん。
The reason for Goji's frequent visit to the island is because of its illustrious inhabit. Oh, the chibified baby. Now you can say he's not cute. Actually, he's now the cutest thing I've ever seen. A huge improvement over Minilla for sure. In fact, I'm going to say right now that all the other of Godzilla's children are an improvement over the little ogre. Gozuki could fly, Zilla Jr. took his mommy's mantle and starred his own series, and Baby is not only cuter, but he also... So yeah, Minilla is still the worst. Anyway, Baby's father appears at the island, stepping on the landmines that fill the beach with the tear gas. With the monster stand, the G-Force rushes to shoot a psychic amplifier at the creature, while Yuki tries to get a clear line of fire for the anticoagulant. The G-Force hits. Yuki misses. Now the time has come for Miki to put her abilities to good use and try to steer the beast through the coast. It works for some long, until the equipment malfunctions and she passes out, only to wake up a couple moments later to do what she does best. Sad space monster lands in the middle of the island and right in front of Baby, for the poor thing's unfortune. Godzilla arrives right after to save his child, but he can barely protect himself from the alien menace, and Junior ends up imprisoned in the middle of space crystals. Having proven its might, the invader flies away from the battlefield. Godzilla soon follows, leaving the island and its trapped son behind. Back to Japan, the G-Force scientists discover that both Godzilla and the alien cells are remarkably similar, if not identical. They theorized that Godzi's genetic material must have traveled to space, either when Biollante dispersed through the upper atmosphere or carried by Mothra when she left the planet. The energies and forces those cells were exposed to while in the vacuum mutated them into the being the specialists dubbed SpaceGodzilla. To counter the new threat, Japan must rely on a new weapon made to deal with normal Godzilla, Mogera. The humongous mech first appeared as Mogera, non-capitalized, in the 1957 film The Mysterians. There, it was under the control of the titular aliens and opposed the Earth Defense Force in a battle for the planet. Originally, its role in Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla was supposed to be filled by Mechagodzilla once again, but the filmmakers had the hindsight of realizing that 1. Having 3 Godzillas in the movie would be too much, 2. Goji and the mech that nearly killed him in the last film teaming up would probably make for a very one-sided battle, and 3. Godzilla would never team up with Mechagodzilla in the first place. Also, apparently, the director just really liked Mogera and wanted it to appear again. So here it is.
究極の対ゴジラ兵器
That's what you said about the last one. In charge of commanding the mech, they leave Yuki. Because, why not? It's not like the guy is a complete loose gun who went borderline rogue on you a couple days ago. Quite in fact, when SpaceGodzilla appears over Fukuoka and Mogera is dispatched to the place, the Major decides to make a detour to first check on Godzilla, who just landed at the other end of Japan. It takes his crew to knock him out and strap the guy to a chair to get the mech back on course. Arriving at the city, the Mogera crew sees that the alien turned the area surrounding the Fukuoka Tower, feeding it with space crystals not unlike the ones on its back. The ensuing fight between the mech and the monster turns out pretty bad for the former. When Godzilla shows up looking for a rematch, he too has it just as rough as in the first time the two creatures battle. Even Mogera and Goji attacking at the same time do little to no harm to SpaceGodzilla, who, at this point, has Omega beam style blasts, energy shields, can levitate others and itself. The mech crew, however, quickly realize that the monster must be using the tower to channel energy into the crystals and back into itself, so they disassemble Mogera. While the Star Falcon distracts SpaceGodzilla, Land Mogera hits the building's structural weaknesses at its base. Godzilla takes care of the rest. But even with its energy source gone, the clone still possesses tremendous power, sending Godzilla to the ground and wrecking Mogera beyond repair. Of course, that the deranged mind of Yuki doesn't recognize this as the end yet. First, he tries to finish Godzilla by his own hand. When he sees that Space Goji is already on its way of doing it itself, however, the Major uses what is left of the mech's power to ram it through the alien and into a building. It gets okay though. In the end, the idiot shouldn't have worried with Godzilla getting defeated at all. Turns out SpaceGodzilla started absorbing its enemies' energy blasts, and Goji notices it, increasing more and more the intensity of his attacks until the monster, now physically incapable of holding so much power, can't take it anymore and simply explodes. Yeah, kinda like that.
ゴジラを目の敵にするのもうやめてください。
大した野郎だあいつも。
That's it? That's how we're gonna end your arc? That's disappointing. The only character in the entire movie with a resemblance of something to do, and that's how they wrap things up. I really can't tell at which moments of the plot he has this change of heart, and that's a shame. This movie is a shame. They promise a bigger role for Miki Saigusa only for her to do nothing in the later half of the plot. The plan to control Godzilla telepathically also disappears from the story after failing, alongside Baby, who should be seen being released from his crystal prison by his daddy in a scene that was removed because it was too serious in tone and clash with the rest of the movie. Actually, and here comes the really sad part, the whole film was severely reworked to be less serious than its original vision. Originally, the antagonist was to be called Astro Godzilla and possess ice-based powers. Alongside psychic ones, he would utilize to control Mickey and Baby, using the woman as a personal translator and the little monster as hostage. To defeat this evil, Godzilla and Moguera would also require the help of Mothra. This script was said to be much closer in style to a Showa Era one. However, after the failure of Toho's latest kaiju flick, Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon, the studio decided to play it safe with a more lighthearted and run-of-the-mill movie. But all the elements of the film's earlier approaches still lurk in the final product. Mickey still has a considerable amount of screen time relative to the previous movies. Baby's in it and gets captured, and Mothra appears, even if only for purely fanservice reasons, as the connection the Cosmos and Missy Saigusa share adds absolutely nothing to the plot whatsoever. And this is what frustrates me the most about this film, to know it could have been so much better. The honest effort at trying to better develop characters and nods to the rest of the Heisei flicks are all appreciated, but as it is, Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla stands easily as the weakest of its contemporaries, even if glimpses of brilliance shine here and there. In the end, if I was to name what stands out the most about this movie, it's probably how it sets up, even if indirectly, what was to be the grand finale of the series. Godzilla's ultimate battle would be not only against an opponent mightier than him, but also against his own dying body.